that everyone would have done that or been so excited about being the mother of God. Right? It's not clear that and she kind of had an inkling that it would not end well. So it's not something that everyone wants to do. And a lot of people are honest about, like, I don't want to raise Jesus. I want to raise an accountant who keeps his head down and just kind of goes along to gets along and maybe has kids themselves and just kind of keeps the line going without too much, without too many problems, without causing too many problems. Even Daddy King was like, listen, Martin, you're just getting these guys upset. A lot of people think that, if I were a preacher at that time, I would definitely want Martin Luther King Jr. to come speak in my church. But, for a lot of times, a lot of preachers did not want Martin Luther King speaking at their church because he was like, this Negro is going to get us killed. And it's not an accident that so many of the civil rights leaders were young, because there's a way in which, one, they had not just less to lose, but, they didn't have families, right? So there's this idea that everybody wants to be around the brave person or be the brave person or to be responsible for the brave person. But that's just not the case. So why does this become the Mary problem? That not everyone would want to be Mary. Well, being black in America is kind of like being Jesus. I'll say this again. Being black in America is kind of like being Jesus. It's not unlike being Jesus. And I say that because we have the capacity, or we're particularly poised to deliver the nation and redeem its sins. That's what Martin Luther King did. That's what Nat Turner tried to do. That's what Smalls tried to do. We are particularly poised to deliver the nation from itself. Open up the gates of heaven for all the sinners who've gone past and redeem generations. And when I say redeem generations, I said this before on a different Jim Crow show, that the Jim Crow regime not only said that you weren't garbage, you weren't anything that mattered. It said your great grandkids wouldn't be anything. And now that those great grandkids are starting to become, born, they're not born. They're not much, right? Because black people don't have much, and the next generations are not getting better, right? So we need to, in order to redeem that, it's going to take a black person to, save the nation from itself. Because Jim Crow's winning. The Jim Crow regime that said that black great grandfathers, their great grandkids wouldn't have anything, that is realized, because we look at those are the kids who don't have much and aren't much and are subordinate, right? So if that's going to be redeemed, it's probably going to be redeemed by somebody black, and every black person who's born is a threat just by seeing the truth. It's like a proto-revolutionary, just because it's hard to ignore the truth. You need an amazing amount of institutions and tutelage to not see racial injustice, or to pretend like it's not a serious issue, or to pretend that it's okay. Like, that takes a distorted family, that takes a distorted church, that takes a distorted life. So what I'm saying is that we have to make choices in how we talk to our children and deal with and have our children deal with race, so that they do not become a revolutionary, or if they become a revolutionary, become one that preferably doesn't die at 33. And so this is all a segue into, I was thinking about a friend who their marriage broke up because the couple did not agree with how to teach the kids about race. One of the father wanted to create someone who understood that this is a war and you're gonna have to get what you need to get, and there's no playing nice with these people, or if you're playing nice with them, don't trust them in a pinch. And the other one's like, no, that'll just make them angry. The wife was like, no, you just need to use them and kind of manipulate them, and if it'll be fine as long as you just kind of work the system a little bit. And that led to the dissolution of their marriage. And there's a way in which that makes sense. At first I was like, oh, that's sad, but I don't know if that's something to end a marriage over. But yeah, they fought over it a lot of times, because you can't really have it both ways. People say oh no, you can have it both ways, but no, if you have it both ways, you're really just a sellout. You can't, that's not freedom. Bowing and scraping is not freedom, but it will live a long life. And I'm sure Medgar Evers' kids would have appreciated actually growing old, watching their dad grow old, right? I'm sure Martin Luther King Jr.'s kids would have appreciated watching their dad grow old also, correct? Also. And it's not a slim virtue in wanting your children to survive and even be comfortable. You can have a pretty comfortable life. I've told people this many times. You can be a very comfortable individual black person as long as you don't stand up for other black people. As long as you're going to stand up for the rights and dignities of other black people, especially those who are set down the path of degradation. As long as you don't stand up for them, you could have an actual pretty comfortable life as a black person in the United States. If you're willing to throw other black people under the bus or pretend that they're all right, the whites will pay you for that. There's a lot of house Negro jobs, in the United States. And as long as you're willing to treat other black people like garbage, we can there's a way in America for you. And there's a comfortable way. And as long as you're willing to unsee things, there's a comfortable way. As long as if you get plucked for the gifted class, you can walk in, see you're with a bunch of white kids, see all the black kids are back in the regular class coloring, and you're here learning things, and be okay with that and tell yourself, well, that's just kind of how it is. There's a place in America for you. Now, if you start raising hell, it says like, look, you whites, you're not any smarter than those people, because I know them, and I know you, and you're luckier for other reasons, but you're definitely not any smarter, and you're definitely not like as interesting or as relevant. As soon as you start talking like that, that's when, the cross comes out for you. So they divorced over how to raise the kids. Are they going to raise the kids like there's a war going on and you got to get your cut not only for yourself, but for your people? Or did they raise them as like to just kind of smile and kind of go along and fill out the role that is assigned to black people in the United States, which is often managing other black people under white supremacy, but not actually teaching black people how to fight the whites for their fair cut, right? So the couple divorced over that, and I thought that's kind of a bizarre thing to divorce until I thought of my own family, and they kind of divorced over the same thing. My parents did. My dad, he wanted to train me and my sister to be killers, like take everything, get it, like beat the whites at everything that you think is yours, and don't worry about their feelings, don't worry about the repercussions, just work harder and grind them to a pulp. And that's how he was going. And my mom thought that, well, that's kind of one, unsustainable. Two, there's no second place for that, because what if you miss? If you miss, then you get the whole ire of the whites coming down on you, and that terrified her. So she, to people who made their way, you can make a very comfortable way, kind of not ticking off too many of the whites and pretending that we're all on the same team. For the people who've made a way that way, people like me sound scary. By the way, if you want me to keep talking like this, and I think you do and you should, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, because not everybody's going to tell you the truth. Not everyone's going to tell you the truth. And you don't get paid much telling people the truth, or even speaking like this, or announcing that this is actually a way we should speak with, a way we should speak. And that this is a real antagonism. And I think, okay, so if it happened to my family, and if it happened to this family of the friend I met, I wonder if it's a thing, and I suspect it's low-key a thing. That part of the extra black tax is you have to negotiate with your partner about whether you're going to take one of these two tax. Are you going to train your kids to be killers, or are you going to train your kids to be comfortable? And to seek comfort and enjoy comfort. Like, you could go pretty far. Like, look at any black Democrat you see. You can go pretty far, even Obama, just telling white people what they want to hear and smiling and crooning and managing, more recalcitrant blacks. You could go pretty far in America that way, keeping your mouth closed. No, I don't think that's freedom. And that's definitely not. That is a minority position. There's always going to be an Oprah, but there's always only going to be one or two. Like, that's not. That position is not open for like a class, like an entire group. That position is open for one of two people to manage and like break the will of the other group, of the masses of the group, right? Like everyone can't be a Clarence Thomas. That's not how Clarence Thomas works. That's not how the system that needs at least one, two, but like not a majority, because that's just not how the system works. The system works that like one or two of those people like manage the rest of us. So, and depending on who you talk to, the HBCUs create these black managers. I'm just saying, a lot of people get on my case about, oh, you married a white woman, how dare you talk? And I'm like, look, I believe in integration. I just don't think black people should integrate on their knees. I think we integrate in power. And, you could say I married a white woman, or did she marry me? Right? So now they're stuck with me in a way that's a little bit uncomfortable. So I also want to mention, I've also run into a few, because I swim in different circles. I've run into two people who got divorced and their husband, two whites, two different, unsuspecting, two whites got divorced. And then something that came up in the court was that the husband worried that they were unfit because the wives cared about racial justice too much. Right? So that was a cudgel used to doubt the sanity of the person who actually cared about racial justice. So there's a black and a white thing. Both people have to negotiate how do we deal with the steady subordination of the black masses. And if you don't go with the script, they'll call you crazy. They'll call you crazy, try to take away your kids, call you unfit to be a parent, because an American parent, because part of what it is to be an American parent is to teach your kids to kind of suck up to the whites, or at least don't rile them too much. Don't rile them too much. Might be unfit parenting to be a rabble rouser. And some people say, well, you could have it. You could have it both ways, but I'm not convinced you could have it both ways. I just don't think you can be both. All right, so these white guys got not just what's yours, but what's your community's, and also suck up to them. I think Booker T. Washington tried to have it both ways. And that is a complicated legacy that's never going to end in freedom, because at the end of the day, in a pinch, the whites are going to take what they want, and you will have ceded all of your claim and power in trying to accommodate them, thinking that in a pinch that it would be okay. But it's not going to be okay. Right? The contract's always going to go to their incompetent cousin. Right? You can say, well, okay, we'll get rid of affirmative action if you get rid of legacy admissions. And they'll say, well, you guys go first. And if you're an idiot, like Charlie Brown kicking Lucy with the football, you give up affirmative action and then find out that, well, we were going to give up legacy admissions, but it got complicated and blah, 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 blah. The whites always pick themselves in a pinch. And because it pays to. It pays a lot of money. And when they don't, we call them John Brown. But for the most part, it's a war, and you got to train your kids to take it. Now, I talk about families a lot for a few reasons. One of them being, my kids will eat your kids' lunch, right? So I have 10, 6, and an 8-year-old. And pretty much in all things, they are superior than I was at 10, 6, and 8. And it's because they have an intact family and a father who knows his game. So I feel bad for people who aren't in my family. And that's why I try to give so much wisdom at, Monday and Thursday, just because I know that my kids are going to eat your kids' lunch. They know too much. They're too good at too many different things that are important in this world, because I drill them on the good things that are important in this world. So I'm raising killers, and I don't want them to have to feed on black kids. I want them to feed on the whites. I want them to feed for the sake of, and then bring the food back to black communities. So this idea that it's kind of a benign or a harmless facet of black life that we have to teach our kids how to negotiate the fact of black degradation. Even if your kids themselves are not degraded, how do they think about black degradation that they see? Because look, anytime you walk into a room, it's an elite room, and you are the only black person there, and except for the staff, and that there are poor black people everywhere else. Every time you walk into that kind of room, either you're going to go two places. What did America do to black people? That's a question you have to ask yourself. Or, well, I guess this is just the way it is, and it shook out naturally, and this is just how it belongs. It's only one. Those are the only two thoughts that can actually come and that'll help you make sense of the situation. Either black people deserved it because they're deficient in a way, or America did something to that people so that they aren't in this room and talking tough in the numbers that they should be. There's no way around it. So how are you going to take, and if America did something to them, that means America needs to be tasked with making them whole. Right? So if you're not teaching your kids that, you're just teaching low-key eugenics, and I think a lot of Americans are low-key eugenics, or you're teaching black kids to just kind of go along to get along. And I just don't think that's freedom or appropriate, or it might. People say, well, that never works. I'm saying, well, sometimes it does work. You can eke out a comfortable life for yourself. And you might even be able to eke out a comfortable life for your family, possibly, but I don't know if that's the case. But as you get wider in your relationships, the relationships are going to be more and more frayed because the relationships are going to be held together by justice, and your life is comfort, and comfort is sustained by assimilating into injustice. So you might be able to save yourself by assimilating without fighting. You might be able to save your close kin, maybe. But as you spiral out to church and community and then job relations, at some point in time, you're going to have to treat black people like trash because they're black in order to sustain your comfortable life. And if that's untenable, then I say you just fight from the beginning and teach your kids to fight. And that's how it works. Right? So I think this is a thing. That it's not just an isolated couple. I think that more couples than I had realized before have fought over this. Because they have the possibility of raising Jesus, but they don't want to raise Jesus. They don't want to raise John the Baptist. Everybody knows what happened to John the Baptist. They cut his head off. Instead, they want to raise a tax collector. They want to raise a nice accountant. They want to raise someone who's not going to, actually redeem the nation, but just kind of survive. And if you have an ideology, a family ideology, a notion of self-determination that's tied to survival, mere survival, and even comfort, it's not obvious that actually caring for black people is the best way to go. And that's what they're going to teach their kids. And I just don't think that that's what you should teach your kids. Or I think it should be a very, very, very vibrant conversation. And I just think a lot of people, it turns out, are going to be fighting over this or do fight about this. And I think it raises marriage. Because if you're trying to raise a killer and the other person's trying to raise an accommodationist, that's going to be a mutually exclusive aspiration for your children. The kids are going to get two different messages. I'm pro-killer, but I see the virtue on the other side. And like I said, this is something that my parents themselves fought over because my dad wanted to raise me and my sisters to be killers. And then my mom got freaked out about that and just decided that that's not the safe way to go. And that, honestly, to a lot of liberals, real parenting looks like abuse. And, but now that I ritually abuse my own kids, I realize that oh no, this is just what raising a fighter looks like. And my kids are fighters and they're good. And like I said, I just don't want them to have to snack on you. This is why I want all black parents to raise fighters. All right. Thank you for your time. I appreciate, you coming to listen to my wisdom every Monday and Thursday. And I think you should, give the show to your friends and then talk about it and figure out where I went right and where I went wrong. But I do know that this is a point of contention in no small number of black, and it turns out even white households, if it turns out that one of the whites isn't on the same script. But this is no small amount of contention. Are we going to raise our kids to be killers, or are we going to raise our kids to be comfortable? And even if that comfort means participating and supporting other varieties of injustice. Quiet and comfortable. All right. Take care. I will see you on Thursday talking about something completely different.